Welcome to Movie and a Beer, everybody. This is Dan bringing us in. We have a couple of really awesome, amazing friends joining us tonight for an amazing episode about vampires. I would say that while you really should kind of take it tongue-in-cheek when you watch a vampire film because you've seen so many of them and it's you know what to expect, this one actually was a little bit different. We have our really good friends here to help us talk about this.
This is Blake. I'm your Renfield expert.
Ooh.
And this is Brian, your ska expert.
Oh, there we go. Because there's ska in this. So we watched the movie Renfield Renfield. It was in the theaters recently. Does have Nicolas Cage
playing Dracula. Nicholas Hoult playing the titular Renfield.
Yes, who is the familiar. Mm-hmm. And they do explain what a familiar is on the screen. You have to read it. You know, it's like they don't explain it because, you know, you can read it.
Yes, they do. They say what it is, and they also do the little visual on the screen.
So he was a land lawyer or some sort of real estate person, and Dracula decided to make him a familiar because he wanted to join him because he was greedy.
Yeah, so a familiar is a servant.
Yes.
And he is under Dracula's control, perhaps a mental, perhaps a psychological control.
Yes.
But he's also got some powers.
Yep.
Similar superhuman powers that he gets from eating bugs.
He does.
And this is the Dracula story told from the perspective of
Renfield,
the servant.
Yeah. It's essentially a sequel to the original Bela Lugosi because they seamlessly edited the guys into the scenes from the original movie, and I loved it.
Yeah, that was amazing.
So they face map digitally Nick Cage and Nicholas
Hoult. Yep.
Into the characters from the original 1935 Dracula.
That seems right.
Yeah. The original one that we've all seen. And times at Halloween.
Yeah. So we enjoyed a couple of beers. So we had gone out and we were chilling, having some food, and we stopped at Bridgetown Beer House on our way back to the house to watch and then record as we are now. And I was like, hey, let's find some can art that is appealing to the Dracula the inner Dracula in all of us. And we got a couple of really amazing cans with some pretty interesting artwork on them. One was extra hoppy Belgian style pale ale, and the other was a fruited sour, a Gose. And we'll talk about those in a little bit. One's called Bitter Death, and the other one, I don't even know if it has a name. I think it's Glasgow Smile is the official name of it.
Yeah, Glasgow Smile is the term when someone carves their face, like they carve the side of their mouth up. Like that's what it's called, a Glasgow Smile.
Or a squealer scar.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
People who talk.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And the can art has a dude getting scythed in the mouth. That's why it's named that.
Creepy. Basically, this takes place in New Orleans, the movie.
Modern day.
It's 90 years later. Renfield has grown weary and exhausted of bringing poor Dracula all of his victims, or food, as it were. And it's abusive relationship. He's codependent.
Yeah.
And he's going to these codependency meetings. It's hilarious.
Yeah. I would say this is a really fun movie, but there's a lot of comedy, a lot of kind of modern tropes. There's 12-step program information.
Yep.
There's also a lot of violence that is so extreme that it's funny.
It's funny violence.
I said the phrase, we're basically watching a Mortal Kombat Fatalities compilation during this movie. The way Renfield just drops dudes is horrifying and incredibly funny.
It's lots of blood splatter.
And it was written by story screenplay is Robert Kirkman, and Ryan Ridley, who's worked with Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon and all those guys, wrote the screenplay. So both very good at comedy kind of guys.
Yeah, a lot of visual comedy in this one. You're like, oh, that's hilarious. And even if you watch the trailer, Aquafina, who is the cop that befriends him, who he has feelings for because she sees him for who he is and not the evil creature that kills people and brings him to his master to eat. Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting
She was actually
twists.
She was named for one of the only American characters in the original novelization.
Yeah.
So this movie does do a lot of send up love letters to the original works, but it's clearly its own weird thing.
And I would say the violence is, though there's a lot of splatter, it's not not gory. It's more kind of like Evil Dead comedic.
Yeah,
violence.
yeah.
It
It's
is.
over the top.
It looks fake as hell.
Like,
I mean, the dude he pulls some dude's arms off and starts beating other people with the arms.
He
like
skewers
nunchucks,
a couple of guys.
and then skewers people with him. I'm like, how? What? No, what? Oh, gross, no. And
God,
then pulls them out and starts beating more people with them. You're just like, how unrealistic is it? But it's hilarious.
Oh no, it's so good.
and I will say that Nick Cage does a great job. You know, he is known for chewing the scenery, but it really kind of works in this film. And he is an understated version of Nick Cage as Dracula.
He's restrained.
Yeah, which is amazing.
I mean, he did have his moments. I mean, there were definitely scenes where he was playing it up and hamming it up, where it's like, oh, okay.
Doing a lot of hand motions, covering his mouth. Like, oh, really? Oh dear. Oh yeah.
Yes. And it's like, you know, you can't bring a gun to come kill Dracula. That's just not going to happen. A gun's not going to do it.
Well, you got to try.
But you got to try. And that's what they do. They try.
I appreciate they showed him turning to mist. I feel like a lot of Dracula films don't show him turning to mist. He did the bat trick a lot. That's cool. He didn't control animals, but I read in the trivia, since he's working with the Lobos crime family, Lobos is Spanish for wolf. Yeah, it's a little wink to like, hey, he's controlling wolves.
So he finds an alignment, a similar interest, and he finds there's people that want power like he does, and he takes advantage of that. And he starts, you know, let's not plot spoil it too much, but they join him, and he takes advantage of that.
It feels like a Robert Kirkman plot line, and I'm here for it. I really dig how that guy knows his pulp and his comic book stories.
Yeah. And then I would also say there's some very funny kind of inside baseball nods to the lore of Dracula. For example, Dracula can't go into Renfield's apartment until he sees a floor mat that says, welcome, come on in.
Oh, it's so good. And then at the meeting, codependent meeting, guys.
And that's in the trailer, so we're not spoiling that.
Oh, no,
at all.
yeah.
That's a, don't invite him in, because you have to invite him in. And once you do, you're dead.
It's too bad that we didn't get to see any running water lore, but I guess that wouldn't really help the story at all.
But there was the whole, like, I'm curious if they're going to do a spinoff of the guys that were in the 12-step help program that he brought back using Dracula's blood.
Oh God, that was really
funny. Whole last scene is them going, and you know, there's just things we can't unsee now, and we experience that we can't unexperience now. Thanks.
I feel like they're going to leave that as just a one-off joke, but I would like to see what that guy saw. I'm curious now.
Yeah, go to the other side.
Love the action scenes. I feel like this movie did everything just right. Like the comedy was right there. Awkwafina getting to just Awkwafina up a little bit, yelling at Kyle.
Yelling at cops. She's a cop. She yells at cops. You know.
Well, yeah, but that guy sucks. Apparently, the butt kicking was fun. Aside from the blood effects, I think the special effects were pretty good. The flying around, and that's usually the easiest thing to pull off in like special effects film is like super strength.
Yeah, the wire work was pretty simple.
Yeah.
There was nothing super fancy going on. I'm guessing a lot of the blood splattering was like post-production added in.
Yeah, I'm sure it was digitally added. But you know, Dracula turning into bats, that was a good CG effect.
That was really pretty.
Also, him burning in sunlight. We saw that a couple times.
Yeah.
We saw the protection circles. That was some CG. But it was, you know, it was all clear. It wasn't too much stuff going on in the screen at once, which everyone knows is a pet peeve of mine. It was easy to follow the action.
Yeah, it enhanced it. It enhanced it and helped the story be more funny. So I don't think it distracted that much.
No. I love that they went to New Orleans because we got a nice color palette throughout the whole thing. A lot of neons, and at one point pastels become a theme for Renfield.
Yes. I like that sweater.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he decides he's no longer going to serve the Dark One, he kind of has this suburban pastel vibe. He gets his own apartment.
Well, he's been alive for over 100 years, and so he saw the 70s and embraced the 70s.
He outfits it with posters from the office supply store.
Yeah.
You know, hang in there
cats. One said YOLO, which shook my brain for a second.
I was like, what? Does he even know what that means? I don't know. Obviously he does, because he was trying to live his one life.
But yeah, big fan of the colors in this. The poster does it, the trailers do it. I'm curious if that's becoming the modern vampire color, because all the ads for What We Do in the Shadows has a similar neon dark gothic shades of purple kind of look in a lot of them. I wonder if that's Hollywood's way of saying vampires.
Well, they're trying to make it modern, and
Okay, I can see that.
And comedy helps you do that really well.
Yeah. Nicholas Hoult has been a zombie and I guess he's not really a vampire, but he's dealt with vampires. He played Beast in the X-Men movies, which is kind of like a werewolf.
Yeah, he turned into a beast.
When are we going to see Nicholas Hoult play a mummy? Or the creature from the Black Lagoon? Let's get that
Oh,
back.
There you go.
Ooh,
That'd be interesting.
that's right for a remake.
Yeah.
Or Jaws. Same thing.
Well, no.
Different setting.
No, it is
Same
not.
thing, different setting. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
Jaws is not a misunderstood man-like fish monster. He's just a big fish.
He's just a big fish that's hungry.
Yeah. We're not here to talk about Jaws. We're here to talk about how great Nicolas Cage is.
Yeah. And there was, I think, interestingly enough, the Familiar had a nice accent that stayed consistent, whereas Nick Cage's was all over the freaking place. And I think he was just playing with it. I don't think he took it seriously.
Nick Cage goes from 0 to 100 back and forth pretty frequently. That's his skill set, is being across the board. And Dracula, I mean, he played Dracula kind of consistent. It was like if Christopher Lee was cranked up to 1,000.
Yeah, which is
right?
weird.
Christopher Lee played Dracula?
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and in kind of his quiet acting scenes,
Yeah.
I would say he was very consistent and very believable. He was looking for power, and he was trying to manipulate the different people.
Correct.
And Nick Cage pulled it off for sure.
I think so.
Definitely.
I also love the makeup work on him.
Yeah, when so the beginning scenes are him trying to find the Familiar, trying to find food for Dracula, and Dracula is then forced to find food on his own, which he does find, which then restores him to full power.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the whole thing is, it's easy to take him down if he's not at full power, but once he's there, it's kinda hard. And especially the makeup effect of like half of his face gone and like the whole like weird one human ear and the other ear is just charred.
That
It's
was
kind of like,
great.
oh, that's gross as heck. Good practical effects.
And they also, I guess, reverse aged him from when he was really sun damaged to where he was back to his full power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there were about 5 or 6 scenes where he progressively got fuller and fuller with his practical makeup effects.
Oh, yeah.
He's Ash and he's like, "Are you okay, Master?" No. This hurts.
Get me a bus of cheerleaders.
Oh, yeah. A bus of children. Or some nuns. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing because almost every Dracula instance of reading or watching a TV show or a movie, it's not about is it an innocent or is it pure?
I feel like I've seen that before, but I don't know if it was Dracula specific.
Yeah.
But it's usually he just can't drink wine. He drinks blood.
Yeah. And this one, he's walking around with a martini glass full of red stuff, but it's obviously not blood because it's not viscous. It's just liquid.
Yeah,
I'm like, you're not fooling anybody with
we're meant
that.
to assume that it's blood, especially the martini with the 4 eyeballs.
Yeah, it's metaphorically blood.
I'm like, where did he get those from?
Well, I like they stuck to the
in his lair, there was the pile of corpses.
Yes.
and the blood bag throne. Loved that set.
Yeah, lots of, and that's so. I would say, while the gore was a little squeamish in some scenes because they do get into it. If you can find humor in that and just know that it's fake, you're fine. But if you're squeamish around that, and some people are, they don't like horror movies.
Usually am, but I was pretty okay with this one. The tooth part had me like, oh no, but then it got awesome again.
Yeah, it's so over the top. It's clearly make believe.
Like Dan mentioned Kill Bill earlier, and that's enjoyable for the same reason, where it's just blood doesn't spray like that.
No,
it's not a fire hose, but it's just like, this is really fun. This is wacky, and it's silly.
People's arms just don't rip off.
Well, they do if you pull them hard enough, and that's the whole thing. It's like, and then what happens to all that blood pressure? I mean, it squirts a little bit, but then it's like it's a little squirt, not like a fire hose, which happened quite a lot. There's a lot of fire hose blood scenes in this movie, which is like, okay, interesting, funny.
I'll have to learn how to edit videos and just keep putting fatality over all the fight scenes.
I mean, they literally did like an X-ray when Renfield kicked the one dude, and they went to an X-ray of like all the bones,
which is a thing in the new Mortal Kombat.
And then it's like, and then you see blood coming out of his mouth and his other end, and it's just like,
actually, The one time it was a little upsetting was when Dracula went on a very specific killing spree, and they didn't see him as over the top CG, which I imagine they did for the the emotional weight of the scene. And then when they were like in the big fight scene with bad guys, that was like wacky, cartoonish blood everywhere. And I just realized that. I thought that's pretty clever.
Yeah, time frame wise, this takes place.
intentional,
Yeah, this
sure.
takes place like over like 3 days
Yep.
in movie time,
Yeah.
quote unquote movie time.
Yeah, the prologue's kind of him explaining, oh, here's how I got here. And that's technically the 90 years, but really,
Yeah,
we're watching over 3 days in New Orleans.
yeah, which is great because then it's not strung out and there's not like, well, what did they do between here and there?
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like him wearing the same clothes running around. It's like, oh yeah, it's the same day or the next day.
Or I guess, how long was his shopping spree? Maybe that had a
could-
couple
there
days.
There was a montage where he dressed.
They never say how
he
long that
shopped
takes.
for his new pastel.
Yeah, but he
yuppie outfit.
told him like he said it was just like the day before or the next
Yeah.
day.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Dracula said you went to go get food and you never came back yesterday or the day or whatever earlier.
That's fair.
I imagine that montage, while it seemed like it took place over a long time, I don't think it did. I thought it was like a 1 day move in.
That's what it felt like. Just a couple days of
Get his apartment set up, and
Yeah.
he
quick and
is.
easy.
I'm,
He
I'm
has
no
a tiny
longer
bit of.
the servant.
Yeah,
I'm taking back my power.
he could probably move faster than regular people. He's got a tiny bit of Dracula's power.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, so there's
Bugs.
a theory about if the parent Dracula that turns everyone dies, and this has been in a lot of TV shows and movies.
Yeah, I think Blade does this a lot.
Does everyone who they turned then lose their power and die? And that's, I don't know. I mean, because
Dracula doesn't turn a lot of
He
people.
doesn't. He just eats them or kills them.
He makes them familiars, which is like which I think people forgot was a thing until What We Do in the Shadows got big.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and so he gives him his blood. He doesn't kill him. They don't drink each other's blood. He just gives, Dracula just gives him blood, and then he's now subservient.
The classic, the classic way to turn into a vampire it's a lot of like agreement, and there's, I think the whole psychological study of it is like it's people who are into blood play, where I drink some of your blood, you drink some of my blood. That way, you become my whatever the term is for like when a vampire turns somebody else.
Yeah.
It's a very specific weird pyramid scheme.
It is. And
If you turn 5 people, you become your own boss.
Yes. I mean, I watched a lot of, there's a lot of TV shows, a lot of really good ones that have been out there. True Blood being one of them. I've watched that religiously, and I've watched it, not all the way through, but this later seasons get a little hokey, but the earlier ones is really interesting about that dichotomy and how does that work? Because there's a hierarchy, because they're among us, and
they regard us as cattle.
Correct.
Blade movies talk about that all the time.
Yeah. This one doesn't. It's just go get me some food.
Well, is Dracula in the True Blood series? Because they get
they're all vampires. But
but
they
is there
don't
a Dracula?
They don't ever say that.
Okay.
There are some that are super old that are like in charge of stuff.
Yeah.
The pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
They're the head, but they never actually point out like who it all started with. And is that thing still around?
Yeah.
Whereas What We Do in the Shadows clearly defines who
Yeah.
is. And the councils that exist.
The councils. Love that show.
And turn it into
movie.
a nightclub.
Yeah, I can't remember the last Dracula movie I've watched. Like I know I've seen the 1930s one, and
Underworld 3.
I don't think I saw the third one.
Yeah, I've seen
Blade 2.
So the Underworld.
I count that as a Dracula. I don't know if it's a
Interview
Dracula.
with the Vampire or
Interview with the Vampire.
Bram Stoker.
The
Bram
TV
Stoker's.
The TV series Interview with a Vampire just got re-released. They're
Ooh.
remaking it with a completely different kind of setting. It's still in like New Orleans and takes place over a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
They're traveling from the old world to the new world and stuff is still kind of in there,
Interesting.
but it's completely different approach to the drama between the two. And that's what drives it. I've only watched one episode. It was kind of boring because it's slow, but it's a Dracula movie. They're not supposed to go fast. This one went fast.
Yeah.
This movie was pretty nonstop. There were some pauses,
entertainment,
but yes.
action,
Yep.
and a story told from a different perspective.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had a Renfield movie before.
No, and in Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman as Dracula, Renfield was Tom Waits in,
Yes.
I think, only one scene.
Oh yeah.
Where he briefly appears in jail eating bugs in a
Yep.
sanitarium, right?
Yep, something like that.
Yeah.
And he's insane because
Yeah.
he
Who eats bugs?
yeah. Well, he does, but that situation, he didn't get power from it. He just ate bugs.
Right.
Whereas this one, it's like I get my power through eating something and channeling their energy. I become
which
whatever.
feels very comic booky, which
Yes.
which I'm on board with.
Yeah.
Absolutely
It
nothing.
actually
wrong with
felt
that.
like a
Which
comic
makes
book.
sense with Robert Kirkman as the
Yep.
writer.
Yes. And so during the course of watching the film, we drank 2 beers. They were very.
Yeah, nobody drinks in this movie.
There was
There were 2 scenes in a bar.
2 scenes in a bar, but
Oh,
we didn't directly see anybody drinking.
Yeah.
There were people.
There's a martini glass full of very
eyeballs.
light blood.
There were people being drinking or drunk. I don't know, how would you say that?
Drank?
They got drank.
They got dranked.
They got
peeps
drank.
got drank.
They got drunk. So, yeah, I think we've talked, a fair amount of time now on this really funny movie, which I think we should all appreciate and go see, or see it streaming, because I think it's out on the streaming services now.
Probably. I recommend it.
Yeah, I think at this point we're going to start talking about some beer. So
Yes, we are.
as mentioned, we went out, got some food, and then stopped at Bridgetown Beer House, not far from where we are at this point in time.
Whoop.
It's off of North Mississippi. It's a really cool spot. They have, like 15 or so drafts, and they have a bunch of coolers, and their beer selection rotates really fast, which we appreciate. They always have fun things. And I was thinking, we got like 3 or 4 different beers that we got to pick from, but
Yeah.
I think the 2 that we went with worked really well.
I'm favoring one more over the other, but we'll get into that.
Yeah. The first one that we did is called Bitter Death, and it's a green can, and it's by Jester King Brewing, which is out of, I believe, Austin, Texas.
Yeah. The aesthetic colors on the can really clash with the image of a skeleton poking out a tongue with a hop on it.
Yeah.
It's a skull, not a whole skeleton.
Yeah. It's just a skull.
If you squint, maybe you can see the rest of the body.
So this is an extra hoppy Belgian style pale ale. It is 5%. I couldn't find an IBU on it, but Jester King has always made really big, fun beers. This one I thought was pretty, and I think Brian mentioned this, a little shallow and narrow.
Yeah,
in the flavor
would say
profile.
Kind of one note, kind of not a lot of flavor in it for me.
I'd agree with that.
So from what I could
It's
find,
fine.
it's San
It was okay. Sure.
Yeah.
San Jacinto 2-row malted barley and Denton County wheat malt from Tex Malt. So Texas ingredients: Perla, Hallertau, Mittelfru, and Tattnanger. I can never say that word correctly. So those hops are pretty traditional German style hops. I think that's why this had a little bit different approach to being a pale ale. It had less of an American style to it. It wasn't super grassy or hoppy. It had some bitterness to it, but the bitterness was a little more restrained. And as just a 5% beer, it's not an IPA because it's below 6%. So it does have a similar profile as an IPA would, but it doesn't have the alcohol.
I don't think it matched the movie all that well. I enjoyed it fine. I was drinking. I was watching the movie. I was thinking, this is a fun ride.
Okay, but it wasn't a real complex beer.
No.
And this film, though very entertaining, has some layers to it.
Yeah.
And definitely not what you would expect. And this beer was kind of
It was okay.
standard.
So they
Yeah.
also go on to say they use Antwerp yeast from White Labs.
Whoa, cool.
Which is a Belgian style yeast. And that gives it that kind of estery, clovey, spicy kind of hit on the very back of it, which I got a little bit of.
I did not. I didn't catch that.
It's very much not an American style pale. It's very much a foreign style pale ale.
Well, that's why it didn't work. This movie took place in America.
Correct. So yeah,
This is in New Orleans.
yeah, and I thought the malts were a little shallow and just kind of crackery.
Yeah.
Even though the beer itself with the Belgian yeast was smooth, it still it was like sharp and shallow, which is okay.
Like Nicolas Cage's teeth in this movie.
Yes, sharp and shallow and regrowing continually. That's gross.
Like shark teeth.
Yep. So the next one we did, though, the second one.
This one, boy, the can art is upsetting. It looks like
it's pretty gory.
It looks like indie comic book work where they have no one to answer to and they just dive into as discussing as they want, and it's usually not a great read.
Yeah, so
But-
this is Glasgow Smile, And the can art is a dude's face with his side of his mouth being cut open with a scythe.
Ugh.
And a skeleton hand pulling his eyes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where the rest of the skeleton is.
And lots of blood splatter, which we didn't know this movie was going to have that much blood splatter.
Yeah, the trailers
There's
really
a lot of
keep
blood
it
splatter.
toned down. There's like,
But it matched the film.
oh
pretty
yeah,
well.
that's pretty
oh
good.
yeah.
And
So
what style of beer would you say this is, Dan?
yeah.
So Glasgow Smile is a sour ale or fruited gose from Nightmare Brewing, which is out of Bayshore, New York. Never heard of them. Interesting can art. Again, we picked the cans based on the artwork. We grabbed a bunch of other stuff, but we're like, hey, these look really interesting. So this is soured on wild Scottish bilberries with heather, lemon zest, raspberries, and blueberries.
Holy cow.
It's a lot. You had mentioned, Blake, about what Glasgow Smile. So it originated in the 1930s era in Scotland. Signature move performed on those unlucky enough to suffer at the hands of the Glasgow Razor gangs.
Jesus.
So if you told on them, they would cut your mouth open.
Slicey.
Yeah, not so fun. So it didn't matter who you were. If you crossed them, that's how they silenced you. Kind of gross. But
Well, let's not keep silent about this beer.
yes, exactly.
No, this is pretty good. I haven't had a Gose in a while, and I always have this image in my head of it's gonna be a lot of like big flavor bomb, and I'm just gonna be overwhelmed. But this was pretty good. It didn't I liked it more. It didn't overwhelm me too much.
Yeah. So originally, it's brewed, and then the primary is done with the wild bilberries and the heather, which gives it kind of a floral hit a little bit. Those are very Scottish. Those are from Scotland. Yeah, that's where you're going to get
okay.
those. Well,
Nice.
Heather can grow anywhere, but the bilberries, those are specific to Scotland. And then they do a secondary with lemon zest and black sea salt, and then they put it on, after that's done, on raspberries and blueberries and maraschino cherries, which just gives it that gentle jammy hit. It's sour, it's tart, it's a little dry, not sweet forward, which we really appreciate. All of us were like, we thought it was going to be sweeter. But
Yeah.
it was actually a really gentle beer.
Yeah.
The citrus and raspberry tartness just really, really made you want to drink it more.
Yeah, I would say this is kind of sour and tart up front, and then it kind of mellows and kind of sits on your tongue, and is kind of if a flavor was a pastel,
This would be
this would be it.
Yeah.
And that kind of matches Renfield's new choice for his life.
Yeah.
So in that way, it really goes well with the movie.
Yeah, visually the can art went well, and then the actual beer itself, I think, as the movie transitioned to him trying to take over his own life and stop being subservient, this beer worked really well with those scenes. I think it just lent itself.
Yeah, even the super duper Mortal Kombat style fight scenes seem to match because there's a lot of color, like more color happening. Like it stayed very almost like how the original film was in black and white, and Dracula kind of kept this like monochrome lifestyle. Once Renfield slips out of his out of that shadow and color explodes, you get the flavor of colors on this beer. Like I don't know if I tasted all of the flavors you listed, all the berries and all, but I got a good handful of them. I really liked it.
And certainly compared to the first beer, which was kind of monotone, this has much more flavor.
Oh,
It's a way more deep beer. It's got a lot of depth of character. Obviously, Goses tend to have salt in them, and that's going to
always forget about that.
They have salt in them at some point in time, part of the fermentation process.
Is the salt meant to like activate flavors or just nice?
Pretty much. And
cool.
So like when you're looking at the flavor wheel, you have salt is usually adjacent to a bitterness of some sort, be it fruit or an acid. It complements the acid, and that's what this does. So you have all these acidic fruits, as well as lemon zest, which is super acidic. You put a little salt on it, and it dumbs it down a little bit, but it's still as strong and present as it is. It's just not as... It's hard to explain.
Yeah, definitely.
I thought you did a pretty good job.
The tartness of this definitely kind of diminishes, but the flavor kind of stays on your tongue.
So there's a super secret trick. If you don't like bitter things, put salt in it. And salt is an anti-bittering agent. It basically works. Okay. It works against the acids that create the salt, the bitterness. So people who hate really bitter coffee, throw a little salt in it. I know people who do that, and I don't drink coffee, but I'm like, oh, well, I suppose you're right. I've never tried it myself because I've never drank it, but yeah.
I'll give it a shot. I like bitter stuff, but I'll try it and see how it
I like
changes.
bitter coffee, so I won't add salt.
Yeah. Well, I always think it would like change the flavor, but everybody's like, no, it doesn't. It just makes it less bitter. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a friend who does that, and he claims that it's the only way to drink coffee. And I'm like, all right, that's all you, brah. Go for it.
Technically, the only way to drink coffee is with your mouth, but
he's a nurse. He can do it intravenously if he needs to. He can suppository that shit in a heartbeat, and you would never know.
That's a totally different podcast.
Yeah, I'm gonna be sick for that podcast. I can't make it
because there was some fetishy stuff going on in this movie too. There was all kinds of like kind of S&M-y setup.
I feel like that's always a thing with vampire movies. Like,
I mean, there's definitely this weird fetishy sexual component,
and Renfield
part of vampirism.
Renfield implied, hey, well, I know you want he asked for a busload of cheerleaders. And Dracula's
to be innocent.
Yes, and Dracula's response was, "It's not a sexual thing. I'll eat boys and girls.
Yeah,
I'll eat
he's like complaining like a worn out parent. Like, I don't care about the gender. I just want to eat. I have to be innocent. He's like putting his feet up. Sure thing, food. Pop. Sure thing.
Yeah, there you go. So, I think this is a really fun film. Not necessarily for kids because it's pretty gory.
I know, it's crazy gory.
Teenagers maybe. Yeah, they have seen probably worse in the video games they play on a daily basis. So
I'll say it again: the X-ray thing, that is a thing in Mortal Kombat.
Nice.
Probably not a date movie.
I don't know. It's funny,
but if your partner
has a good ending,
has a good sense of humor,
likes
this kind of thing,
it's
definitely see it with them or some buddies.
Yeah, definitely a hangout.
Fun to see with other people
because we made some comments as we were watching it. We're like, oh shit. Yes, it was like he just literally beat the dude with his own arms. What?
That's so cool. But if you're gonna pick beers with this, I think something more like our second one.
Yeah,
so with a little complexity. You probably need 2.
Yeah,
maybe 3.
We shared. We didn't really want to get really heavy into it, and these aren't necessarily big beers. The
movie's like an hour and a half ish, so that's crazy.
So 5% and a 6.7%. Not super big, not super strong, but complex enough. I think finding something a little complex is going to help with your enjoyment of the film, because the film has, while it is a shallow film, it is not shallow in content. It does have some interesting backstory and some character development, which is worthy of watching. So Dracula's pretty narrow, but everyone else is good.
Yeah.
He just wants to eat.
Good action, good humor, good fun. Good acting, mostly.
I like the cast, except Kyle. That guy sucks.
Yeah, Kyle sucks. Going after the bad people doesn't justify killing them.
Yeah.
But it could.
Sure.
Yeah. And how much hydrating did you do?
I drink a whole glass of water, dude.
Oh, hydrate.
Because if you don't hydrate, you'll dehydrate.
Hydrate.
Also, I love that every time, like, the Dracula's accent was fine, but he really laid on heavy when we got to Dracula. Like, the heavy DL.
Also known as Count Dracula.
Yeah.
Or president. Why did he say president?
I know. I don't know why he said president, but he did. It was like, what?
Well, his big plan was either to make everyone familiars or food.
Correct.
That's right. Yeah.
And that he literally said that you're either gonna be working for me or eat.
I've heard worse platforms.
Yeah, true. I mean, there's a lot of horror films out there that are similar to that. So yeah. All right. Well, I think this is a good episode. I think this is a great film. I suggest it, as we said, it to people. Find something fun to drink.
Yeah.
And as always, the opinions expressed during the taping of this recording are those of the hosts. And I want to shout outs and thanks to everybody that provided us the opportunity to get together and hang out and have some good beer. So thank you, Bridgetown Beer House, and our friends and family that do actually listen to this on occasion. So, keep listening. We're having fun. I think the summer's going to bring some good films our direction.
We got some interesting options coming up.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, get ready to figure out what to drink with Oppenheimer.
No. Heavy mixed drinks.
just a single tumbler of whiskey as you just go, my God, the horror.
And swirl it the whole time and never actually drink it. Just let the ice melt.
Oh my God, what have we done?
All right, well, thanks for hanging out, everybody.
This is Brian signing off.
This is Blake, your familiar, saying, I don't know, something. Put something in cool later. And
yeah, we'll come up with something.
Produce.
Produce it. All right, well, Take care, everybody. Have a good evening or good morning or afternoon, whenever you're listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Bye.
Drugs, give me drugs, I don't need it, but I'll sell what you got. Take the cash and I'll keep it.